typically when you think of private business, you think of something smaller. You think of either a solopreneur with a little business in their bedroom trying to make a buck. You think of mom and pop hardware stores. But typically when you think of private business, you think of something small. However, just a few weeks ago, this was released. It came out, I think, at the end of July, early August. This is the world's 50 most valuable private companies. This is put together by the Visual Capitalist. They pulled their data from this CB Insights, a complete list of unicorn companies. A unicorn company is essentially a company, a private business with a valuation of over $1 billion. And you can see this list here. And essentially the Visual Capitalist took this list and put together this graphic. It's fascinating. I want to spend a few minutes just talking about this. I think this really highlights the power of private business. Private business can become something quite amazing. Now, in our society, we tend to think like, if you want a company to be big, you got to go public. You got to go public. And it's a numbers game. You give up a lot of your control and power. You get a ton of money in. You can scale and become something amazing. That's not necessarily the case. I mean, yes, you can have amazing success when you go public, and there are things you can do when you get access to public investment that you can't do as a private business. But I think one of the lessons that this list provides, just one, there's a few in here, is that, if you have grand visions, you can keep your company private. It might keep you from doing certain things. It might hold you back. Access to capital and so on can be challenging. However, there are great opportunities for private business, and you can see in this list of 50 that, my goodness, these companies do really well. And just real quick, if you look at the list here, you can see that a number of these companies share some similarities. Number one is SpaceX. This is Elon's rocket ship business. Number two, ByteDance, which is, of course, the owner of TikTok, Chinese company. Number three, OpenAI, the people behind Claude. Sorry, that's wrong. The people behind ChatGPT. Holy smokes. Number four, Stripe, the transaction business. You're going to run some credit cards on e-commerce. And the list goes on and on. But you see that a lot of these companies tend to be in the technology space. Interestingly, even number five, this Shein, I think it's called, which I think is out of Singapore, $66 billion in valuation. It's in the clothing space, a lot of fashion and beauty. However, it's really an e-commerce company. So let's talk for a minute about valuations. What are we talking about when we say valuation? So if you look at this list, you have this list of unicorn companies that makes up this graphic. SpaceX at $350 billion. That's the valuation. ByteDance, $300 billion. OpenAI, $300 billion. Stripe, $70 billion. Now, the thing with a private business that's different than, say, a public company is like a public company, we know for a fact how much money a company like Apple, Google, Procter & Gamble, these publicly traded companies, we know exactly how much money they take in every year. We know what their expenses are, their money that goes out every year. We know generally like what product and service lines make them money, which ones are losing the money. We know the margins and so on. Why? Because public companies have to report their financials every quarter, and every year they put out an annual report. And so you and I, the general public, and everybody else involved can look kind of behind the curtain in these public companies. Now, we don't know everything that's going on, but we know enough that we can make some determinations. We can infer some things about those businesses. We can be very specific. And that's how you get a stock price. You kind of look at the earnings and how it's performing and the debt load and all those things, and you come up with a number. When it comes to a private business and evaluation, you cannot necessarily know how much that business makes. They do submit a tax return every year to the government. I'm talking about the U.S. companies. I don't know what the Chinese companies and the Singaporean companies, et cetera, do, but I would assume they pay some type of money back to the government. The government always has to dip its beak. This is a universal, eternal truth in the experience of mankind on this earth. So when a private company makes a buck, you and I don't necessarily know that they made that dollar. We also don't know what it cost them to make that dollar. We cannot see behind the curtain. And so this makes the valuation process a little bit more challenging, and there's some guesswork involved. At the end of the day, you're either trying to figure out the revenue, you're trying to back into it, you're looking at analogous companies in the market, or you may be looking at things like an asset list, meaning, hey, what are the assets that this business has? If we liquidated the company today, what would it be worth? Can we apply some multipliers and so on? So when we look at lists like this that put SpaceX at $350 billion, that doesn't mean that SpaceX made in top line revenue $350 billion. It's just, what is the company worth? It's an estimate. It's a guess. But let's do this. Let's take a look at our list. Interest, if you look at the top handful, SpaceX technology, ByteDance technology, OpenAI technology, Stripe technology, Shane technology in that it's e-commerce, Databricks, again, technology, Anthropic, that's where Claude, that's the Claude people, technology, XAI, Revolut, Canva, all of the top 10 technology. And even when you get into Fanatics, you go, well, what's Fanatics? And let's just jump over here real quick. And we go down here. We go to Fanatics, valued at $31 billion. It operates as an electronic e-commerce platform for licensed sports merchandise. So at the end of the day, even though you're saying, hey, I want to buy a Philadelphia Eagles jersey, if you buy it through Fanatics, really what you're interacting with is technology. Yes, they're selling material goods, consumer goods, branded, etc., but they're using technology. That's the business model. The business model is technology. And so one of the things that we see in this list here is that all of these companies, the top 10 at least and more, really are technology companies. That is where the opportunity to scale lies, is in technology. Not shocking. The second thing that I want to point out here, as we look at this list, and let's just scroll down. If we look at SpaceX, okay, that's tech in the sense that it's going to the moon and Mars and so on for Elon's vision of populating the universe. But when you look at OpenAI, you look at Anthropic, XAI, I would say even Databricks, all these companies are based on artificial intelligence. Now, a lot of you know my feelings on AI. I used to be a hater. I hated AI. I still don't trust it, and I still am not buying the hype. However, I have jumped on the bandwagon that AI is or can be a phenomenal tool. I mean, if you know how to use it, you understand what it is, it can be a really phenomenal tool. It can multiply and extend your agency and capability. At the same time, use that tool incorrectly, like a lot of technology, and you can have what the kids call a self-own. You don't want to misapply it, but AI technology occupying probably 50% of the top 10 privately owned businesses, I think that is fascinating. If we go back to the list, there's a few others that are interesting here. SpaceX at the top at $350 billion. Obviously, there's this desire to get off the planet. Recently, the Trump administration, I'm doing a podcast episode on this. Look for The Currency. It's on my YouTube channel here. But the upcoming one, I'm talking about the fact that they want to put a nuclear reactor on the moon. They want to put a nuclear reactor on the moon. China, Russia already in negotiations to work together to do the same thing. But SpaceX getting off the planet, exploring outer space, clearly hot right now. ByteDance social media, TikTok has just been this crazy company that has taken off to such a degree that it's created alarm amongst American lawmakers, et cetera. And of course, we've talked about the AI revolution. The other thing that's kind of interesting to me, if you want to look at coming in at third place, so we say space exploration number 1, AI number 2, just in our listings here. If you were to put the valuations together, AI would probably be the dominant place where a lot of the valuation lies. But this next is online consumer transactions. Again, these are private companies. But Stripe, if you look at Stripe, $70 billion valuated. Stripe powers e-commerce. E-commerce doesn't really happen the way that it does today without Stripe. And all the little guys like me that are selling something online, et cetera, we're using Stripe, as are the big boys. So Stripe, huge transaction. And for those that don't know, Stripe essentially provides credit card transactions. You go online, you put your card in to a shopping cart to buy Uncle Mike's newsletter or whatever, and you're using Stripe. Stripe is running that transaction. I'm using Stripe, and I'm giving up. If you spend $100 with me, Stripe gets $3, $4. So that's pretty much how that works. But if we go back to the list, we can see here that Stripe, Shine, Fanatics, and then we get down here, Epic Games. You look down at Discord. There's a fair amount of consumer activity, not huge, but a fair amount of consumer activity in all these. So what's interesting is 31 of the top 50 companies that are in this list are American companies. There's been a lot of talk around the concern for American economic dominance, the whole trade war, tariff discussion, which is interesting because this isn't just about how many of our private companies are highly valued, but there's also strategic concerns like, hey, if we got into a hot war with a country, another country, I won't name names, and that country controls all the manufacturing and all the rare earth metals, et cetera, you're in trouble. There's some strategic considerations around trying to reinvigorate the manufacturing base. Some would argue, and I would be sympathetic to this argument, it may be too late. It's not clear to me that we can do that, but we should try. The other obvious takeaway is that AI is dominant in all this, and that China's got 8. So of the 50, China's got 8 of them. And, we often think of China as this massive kind of dominant force. It looms large in the American citizen, the American consumer's mind, American business owners' minds, finance, military. China looms large. And it's interesting to see that 8 of the 50 private companies are Chinese. I got to tell you, 20, 30, 50 years ago, you couldn't have imagined China having private companies, first of all, barely. And if they did, they would be kind of low on the list. These would not be powerhouses. China's proving that it's capable of building impressive businesses. So if you're thinking about private business and you're like, I don't know, you ought to jump in. Hey, if Elon can get a rocket ship out into space and he's valuated at $350 billion and he's probably not even turned a profit yet, you could probably build a company that's worth $1 million, $2 million, $10 million or more. There's just so much opportunity with private industry. And so, I'd love to know what you guys think. What are your thoughts on private versus public companies? What are your thoughts on these giant private businesses? And these valuations are kind of tricky. I'd be curious to know what you think. But, often like a company like Elon's, he's getting a lot of government subsidies, a lot of government support. How much should private business be a part of an economy, in your opinion? I think they're critical. I think they're important on many levels, but I'd love to get your thoughts in the comments. Guys, that's all I've got for right now. Thanks for joining me. I love each and every one of you, and I will catch you in the next video. Cheers.